In a tiny city populated with 300,000 people within an area spanning less than 12 square miles, how do you think a person can dispose of a single body after a murder, or maybe 10? We are about to dive into a murder case that shocked Asia in the 1980s and inspired a blockbuster movie in its wake. But be warned, the story you are about to hear contains some of the most gruesome and disturbing situations you may ever hear in any murder case. So if you think you may have difficulties hearing about all the details of this case, I suggest you click away now. But if you have a strong stomach and curious about this homicide case, then let's begin. Around noon on August 8, 1985, in the waters just beyond the beaches in the Area Preta area, which is located in the northeastern section of the Macau Peninsula, 8 pieces of dismembered human remains were found afloat. Swimmers nearby immediately contacted the police. After the remains were retrieved and examined, it was determined that out of the 8 pieces of remains, 4 were the sole portion of right feet, 2 sole portions of left feet, 3 were the dorsum of the feet, which means the top portion of the foot, 4 fingers, 2 toes, and 2 palms. When the remains were retrieved, they were already badly decomposed and had been in the waters for over 2 days. Due to the fact that there were 4 soles from right feet, the police concluded that there must be at least 4 victims. In the beginning, the Macau police suspected the remains were from illegal immigrants who tried to swim their way to Macau from mainland China and were killed by sharks, but later dismissed that theory due to the sharp edges left on the remains, indicating that the cut on the remains were man-made. They also discovered that the fingers on the severed palms were crushed on purpose, possibly to hide the identity of the victims through the use of the fingerprints. 2 days later, a dog discovered another left palm belonging to a female victim, and 3 days later a female right palm and right heel were found. Faced with a total of 11 pieces of human remains, the Macau police assembled a special task force to begin looking into the gruesome murders. 8 months after the discovery of the body parts, in April of 1986, the Macau police headquarters and the Interpol office located in Guangzhou, China, both received letters written by the brother of Zhang Lin, who was concerned about the well-being of Lin, whom he had not heard from since August last year. In the letter, Lin's brother mentioned that ever since his brother moved to Macau, he had been working hard and eventually was able to start his own business. But ever since August last year, he abruptly disappeared and was never heard from again. Strangely, the restaurant and other properties his brother had worked many years to build were mysteriously taken over by a man named Huang Zhiheng. With the discovery of the human remains 8 months ago, Lin's brother, as he wrote in the letter, feared that his brother and his entire family had been murdered and hoped that the police can assist in finding out what exactly happened. Lin's brother mentioned that Lin had last went back to mainland China to visit relatives in July of 1985 with 2 of his younger daughters, but had not been heard from since. In the beginning, Lin's brother suspected Huang and Lin's wife, Sen Hui-yi, were having extramarital affairs and had killed Lin because of it. Lin's brother further theorized that Huang might have killed Sen and the rest of the family over an argument after Lin's murder. In the letter, Lin's brother listed the 10 missing family members as follows: Zhen Lin, owner of the EIGHT IMMORTALS Restaurant, 50 years old; Sen Hui-yi, wife of Lin, 42 years old; Lin's 4 daughters, ages 9, 10, 12, and 18; Zhang Guangdi, son of Lin, 7 years old; Chen Lidong, Lin's mother-in-law, 70 years old; Chen Li Zhen, sister of Lin's mother-in-law; Zhen Bai Liang, cousin of Lin, 61 years old. Although the claims could not be verified at the time, it did provide the Macau police with a new perspective on the case. While re-examining the remains, police discovered that the fingerprint on one of the female fingers found on the beach was a possible match with Sen Hui-yi, Lin's wife. With the new clues, police began watching Huang Zhiheng, the new owner of the EIGHT Immortals restaurant, in addition to conducting interviews with about 20 neighbors who knew the missing family. One of the poultry vendors reported that in the afternoon on August 4, 1985, he received a call from Lin requesting a delivery. When the poultries were delivered, everything in the store seemed normal. When his employees made the next delivery the following morning, they found a notice posted on the restaurant entrance stating that they will be closed for 3 days. And when the poultry shop owner went to visit Lin's residence, a stranger answered the door claiming Lin and his entire family went to Zhiheng, a nearby city only a few miles away. The neighbor of one of the missing relatives, Chen Li Zhen, sister of Lin's mother-in-law, claimed that on August 5th, a man in his 30s looked for Chen Li Zhen at her residence, claiming Lin's youngest son was having a fever and asked for her assistance. She then left with the unknown male in a cab, never to be seen again. Armed with the new testimonies, Macau police believed that the Lin family went missing between the 4th and the 5th of August 1985. And due to the fact that Huang was reaching 50 years old at the time, police suspected there may be an additional male accomplice who assisted him with the murders. During the afternoon hours on September 28, 1986, Huang left the EIGHT Immortals restaurant in a hurry and attempted to get past Macau customs into mainland China. Noticing his suspicious movement, police made their move, detained Huang and brought him in for questioning. Police found that besides taking over the restaurant then switched to an entirely new staff immediately after, he had also rented out one of the properties previously owned by Lin located on the 4th Street near the restaurant, and moved into another one of Lin's property with his son, who was in his 20s at the time. During the interrogation, Huang claimed he was only attempting to send his wife and daughter back to mainland China and wasn't planning on running. He also claimed that he bought the aforementioned properties from Lin with cash, money he allegedly made by smuggling goods across the border. While being held in custody, Huang claimed that his asthma was acting up and became emotional, threatening to bite his tongue to commit suicide if he is not released. The next day, police released the pictures of the missing family to the public, asking for any information they can provide in helping to solve the case. In the following days, Huang once again changed his story and claimed that Lin owed him $600,000, roughly $80,000 US with inflation, and had transferred ownership of the properties to him willingly to cover the debt. According to Huang, Lin and his family then immigrated overseas, which the police was unable to verify since no traveling record existed indicating Lin's family leaving Macau. Police had also found the keys for Lin's safety deposit box in Huang's possession, along with Lin's passport, birth certificates of Lin's 4 children, and copies of their student IDs. On October 2, 1986, Macau police officially indicted Huang Zhiheng and he was held at the Macau City Jail to await trial. The next day, Huang was beaten by other inmates and was transferred to a local hospital for treatment. Despite his request to remain at the hospital and refusing to return to the city jail, likely due to fear for another beating upon his return, he was sent back to jail on October 4th. The following information was obtained through conversations Huang allegedly had with other inmates at the jail, which detailed the reason and how the murders occurred. As it was only through word of mouth, and since only portions of this story could be verified with evidence found in this case, it should not be considered an absolute factual account of what had occurred, even though most people had accepted this version as facts. As explained by Huang, the actual cause for the murders was as simple as an argument over gambling debt going south. Huang claimed to have known Lin and his wife for many years prior to the incident and had often gambled together, usually playing mahjong or 5-card stud poker. One night in 1984, Huang was playing 5-card stud with Lin, Lin's wife, and a cook. Chen Li Zhen, aunt of Lin's wife, was also present as an onlooker. Starting with only $2,000, Huang finished the night winning close to $180,000. Lin promised to repay the money he owed Huang within a year and verbally promised Huang that if he was unable to repay the debt, he would hand over the restaurant as collateral. Over the course of the following year, Huang approached Lin numerous times about the repayment of the debt, but was turned away every time, never receiving a single dime. On the night of August 4, 1985, after the restaurant closed for the evening, once again Huang approached Lin about the money owed to him, and as per usual, Lin refused to pay. With the prior verbal agreement, Huang notified Lin that, as promised, he would take over the restaurant since, at the time, it is obvious Lin had no intention to pay up. Huang told Lin that he had already hired an entirely new team of waitstaff and cooks, and would have them start working on August 8th with him as the new owner. As before, Lin again refused Huang's proposal to hand over the restaurant as he had promised, going as far as saying, "What the F are you going to do? You don't even have anything written on paper," basically flat out dismissing Huang's claim toward the gambling debt. A scuffle ensued. At one point, Huang broke off the bottom portion of a beer bottle and took Lin's youngest son into a chokehold, threatening to kill the child if Lin and the others made any sudden moves. Even though there was a total of 9 people inside the restaurant at the time, due to Huang having Lin's youngest child's life in his hands, nobody dared try anything. Huang, still having the young child in chokehold, ordered everybody to tie each other up until Lin's wife remained. He then ordered Lin's wife to tie up the young child. Seeing a chance, Lin's wife attempted to break the child away from Huang and pick him up. Huang rushed forward and threw the beer bottle at Lin's wife, killing her instantly. Now going into a blind rage, Huang then killed everybody who was present at the restaurant that night, either by using the broken beer bottle or strangled them with his bare hands. Out of all those whom he killed that night, Lin's youngest son was the last. "My aunt will call the police and arrest you," yelled the child, before he too was killed. The aunt Lin's son was referring to was Chen Li Zhen, who was not at the restaurant that night. Unfortunately, what the child said likely reminded Huang that there was a loose end he needed to take care of, and ultimately resulted in Chen Li Zhen's joining the rest of the family as one of Huang's victims. Huang, after killing everybody in the restaurant, traveled to Chen Li Zhen's residence nearby, claiming Lin's son was having a high fever and would like her to assist the family right away. This was verified by one of Chen's neighbors, who witnessed a man visiting her around the time of the murder, and she was subsequently never heard from again after leaving with the unknown male. Despite the neighbors saying the man did not look like Huang when interviewed by the police, it would be logical to assume Huang was the unknown male that night. Huang also admitted to the inmate he conversed with that he spent the next 8 hours dismembering the family members, then double bagging their bodies in black plastic bags and disposing of them in the dumpsters. After his arrest, Huang had attempted suicide twice. First attempt was on October 4, 1986, 6 days after his initial arrest. By using the sharp edges of a metal trash bin in the jail, he attempted to cut his wrist in a cross-like pattern. He was found bleeding by another inmate, and after 5 hours in surgery, he was saved. Then during the early hours on December 4th, using a sharpened soda can pull tab, Huang again cut open his recently healed wound from his last suicide attempt. Around 8 a.m. the following morning, when the guards were distributing breakfast to the 27 other inmates housed in the same block, they found Huang dead in his bunk, his hand wrapped in a blood-soaked blanket. Prior to his death, he sent a letter to the chief editor of a local paper, proclaiming his innocence. In the letter, Huang stated that since he's going to die soon, in this referring to his impending suicide, he had no reason to lie. He admitted his guilt toward a prior murder he had committed in Hong Kong several years ago, which he wanted to run away from by moving to Macau. While confirming he had several disagreements with Lin regarding gambling debt, he firmly denied killing Lin or any of his family members in the letter. He also wanted to ask the general public to be forgiving to his wife and son, whom he said were from the countryside and knows nothing. In the closing sentence, Huang reiterated that he was going to kill himself not because of guilt for the crime he was accused of, but it was simply due to his failing health, namely his severe asthma issues. The remaining body parts of the 10 victims were never located, although on February 20th, 1989, cleaning crew at a dump site near the beach where the initial body parts of the victims were discovered found a large quantity of human skeletal remains. After examination, Macau police concluded that those were some of the bones of the 10 victims from the EIGHT IMMORTALS restaurant murders. What made this case unique was the fact that even though there were a total of 10 victims, and the murders were committed in the middle of summer, neighbors reported no foul smell when interviewed by the police, which left many to speculate that Huang actually cooked the victims and possibly sold their flesh as pork inside pork buns at the restaurant. In time, this was turned into an urban legend that eventually made its way onto the big screen in 1993 with a movie titled The Untold Story: EIGHT Immortal Restaurants, starring Dandy Lee and Anthony Wong. Anthony, who played the part of Huang, was so successful in bringing the shocking version of this murder to life that sales of pork buns around Hong Kong and Macau took a nosedive when the movie was released. While it made for an entertaining movie if you're into horror, it did paint the case and the accused in a distorted light in my opinion. Yes, all the information and pieces of evidence available at the time pointed toward Huang as the most logical and likely killer. However, the rumor of him selling their flesh as pork was purely speculative. The fact is, unlike the psychotic, sexually deprived monster that Huang was portrayed as in the movie, in reality I think that he was a calm and very calculating individual who had no remorse toward the suffering of others. I believe that his reason for dismembering Lin's family was solely to cover his crime, even though in his last letter to the newspaper he wanted to sway the public's opinion by claiming innocence. It was done so not for his own sake, I believe, but for his surviving wife and son, so that they won't suffer the wrath of the general public after he dies. Don't get me wrong, I have no sympathy for a mass murderer, and especially seeing many of the victims in this case were children made it very tough to feel any sympathy for him. But in the end, I think the misinterpretation of how the murder went down did the family and the accused a disservice by turning this tragic case into a simple, money-making scheme, cashing on the shock value of the horror of knowing human pork buns may have been sold in this infamous restaurant. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the information I've provided, and seeing this is my very first video, I would love to hear from you. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I hope to get on a regular schedule on producing more videos. I already have a few more famous cases lined up. And remember, you never know what people are capable of, so be nice to each other. And I'll see you in the next one.